Hello there, and welcome to my build guide for my Necromancer League starter. A few disclaimers first before we are going to start build guide and explanation and stuff. First of all, yes, I'm aware of the nerfs to Necromancer, of course, but Necromancer is certainly not dead, especially my way to play it is not that hardly nerfed. Like, it took a few hits, but that's totally fine. It's still pretty good for early end game, and I should still be able to reliably clear the highest content in the game without that much of an investment. That being said, I might switch to animate weapon earlier or later in the build once I am able to test animate weapon in its full capabilities after the patches that were done to it with like all the bugs accompanying the last years where some minion percent damage increases for the animated weapon didn't scale whatsoever, so yeah, we'll see about that. But just keep that in mind that I'm aware of all that, and we might switch to animated weapon later, maybe Spell Slinger, Volatile, that we'll see about that. But the core build, like I've played last week, will stay the same, for the most part. Step number 2, if you have any questions regarding this build, and if you're planning on playing a Necromancer this way that I'm doing, or just have any question in general, I'm happy to answer all of these over on my Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/Saltydayn. I'm happy to answer everything you have, although it's mostly German stream. But of course, I will also answer questions in English. So let's get into the build. There will be a path of building in the description, as always, where you can look up certain stages for the build, so like leveling stages, that being said. We'll just go over my path of building because I think it's way easier to explain stuff in here than in the game. So this is the endgame skill tree. Down here you can choose which stage you want to see. Like stage 1 is obviously like just Merville kill and stuff, and then stage 2 is a little bit more, and so on and so on. That also includes the Ascendancy, but it's only the skill tree, so no skill changes, no item changes, because that's just way too much for all the certain like stages in the build development. So let's go over the tree first. I would choose the stage 6. Let's choose the endgame tree. That's easier to explain it that way. So we are starting as a witch, and we are going to ascend into a necromancer, obviously. Once you move over the intelligence nodes into Lord of the Dead, then take Enduring Bond. After Enduring Bond, want to go over here, take Sacrifice and Spiritual Command, and also just take Retribution because it's free minion damage. And then we want to move down here to take Indomitable Army. Why we are doing that I'll explain later, but it's quite important that you do it that way, in my opinion, to feel like good while leveling. After we've taken this, we'll move up here, take the Death Attunement node. It's not really needed, but you can do that early on. Otherwise, you can either choose Fearsome Force, which is also not mandatory early on, and then move down here to Righteous Army and Redemption. You can also, if you don't like this node early on and this node too, you can obviously just go down to Righteous Army and Redemption, or just go down here to Constitution, Shaper node, and take Discipline and Training, and maybe also Sanctity. That's all valid choices, but my path will include taking those nodes and those nodes quite early, but those are only needed for Spectres, which is around Act 5. So you can chill those nodes, it's not really that needed. Once I've taken the mandatory nodes and also this right here, you are free to go wherever you want, but I would personally then go on my way down to Soul of Steel and Heart of Warrior, or especially Warrior's Blood. That's like really important for more life region, and Soul of Steel is obviously really good early on for the flat armor, which is really helping you early on to not get one-shot by everything, because our res will be perfectly fine. That's not a big issue. It's more about having low block chance, having low armor, and so on. So that's why we're doing that. And yeah, then for the endgame, you can choose proficiency if you need it. Like, if you need the dexterity, you can obviously take that, but it's not mandatory to have it. Most of the time I don't even need it, so in this bit, of course, I can just lose it, but sometimes you're very low on dex and you need those 30 dex. So what else mandatory? You will need quite a few gem sockets for a few reasons. So reason number one being anatomical knowledge in exactly this spot and no spot, no other spot. I mean, sure, if you find a better spot, go for it, but that's like the best I could find so far. It just gives a decent amount of life, so we are 7.5k here. If I take this out, we're only at 7.3k, so it's just 300 life, which is perfectly fine in my opinion. You can, of course, go for another Ghastly Eye Jewel, but I would recommend just taking the life. And the second, not really mandatory jewel, but as of the nerfs we've had from the patch notes today, we'll probably go for the Soldier Jewel, which is Unending Hunger, which is kind of needed right now. The area of effect is not mandatory to have it that high or low or whatever, it just doesn't matter so much, but the Soul Eater effect is really good. Like, it's really good once you go to red maps, and to like tier 13, tier 14 plus, then it really helps you get going. Mind Over Matter also is a difficult choice. Some don't like it, and I get that, why it's not that popular, because you will need a mana flask for it, you will need an enduring flask of course, and it can sometimes just be a pain in the ass, to be honest, but most of the time it's perfectly fine in my opinion. I use it quite frequently just to mitigate a little bit more damage, especially once we're getting our hands on Enlightened level 4 or something like that. After that you want to have a quite, not a small amount of jewel nodes, but also not a big amount, just 3 more basically, for the Ghastly Eye Jewels, which should have the following stats. They should have life, they should have the mini damage, minions deal increased damage if you've used minion skill recently, and then one of the 3 following mods. You can combine those on one jewel or just have them spread out on 3 separate jewels like I do. It's totally up to you. It depends on the price you can invest in there. So you want to have Blind on Hit, which decreases accuracy of mobs, which is perfectly fine, because it increases our survivability if those mobs are blinded. The second mod is the most important one. It's the Taunt on Hit, which will make a lot of the enemies just attack our zombies instead of us, so that's also nice. And the third, that is the Hindering on Spells. That is not really mandatory, it's just nice to have because our slave drawers will just permanently slow everything they hit, basically. But again, it's not really needed, it's just nice to have. So, like, normally our slave drawers will just one-shot everything, so that is, like, totally not needed. But yeah, that would be the 3 jewel sockets. You can do whatever you want with those slots, you don't really need them. We're also pathing in this area right here, to put a cluster jewel right there. You can also go down here to put a cluster jewel right here, which is a little bit more traveling for 1 strength node here. And what we'll also do, which I have not yet implemented in this POB, but I will do that once I'm able to get my hands on some of those in the league, will be taking the nodes here, take Resolute Technique, and then put the Timeless Jewel, the Glorious Vanity Jewel of Xibaqua in there, which will double our Chaos Res. Not doubling it, but it will increase our max res by 10% to 85% Chaos Res, and 50% of the elemental damage taken will be converted into Chaos damage. That will give us incredible survivability, and we're also looking for high Chaos Res energy because the new League mechanic as well as Metamorph from last league are dealing very high amount of Chaos damage, and we obviously want to mitigate that. Yeah. As you can see right now, we're at 6% Chaos Res without doing anything really. That's just by having certain items on that have Chaos Res. But yeah, that will be the ultimate goal, but I will not include it in here right now because I'm not yet sure about how I want to go over this or how do I plan to do it and so on and so on. So this will be excluded from now. I will give you an updated version on my Twitch channel and in the description of this video, which might not include stuff like Alliance Spirit and so on. But yeah, we will see about that. And yes, I'm not taking Grave Pact. Grave Pact has just too many travel nodes to give us decent damage. It's totally fine, don't get me wrong, but it's a bit sketchy for our build, and I might change a bit of the pathing to, for example, stuff like Faith in Steel is completely irrelevant once we're taking the Xibaqua stuff. For more energy shield, the same goes for those nodes right here. But yeah, keep that in mind that it might change in the future, and just take a look on the tree once I've posted the update in the comments for a new tree or something like that. But yeah, so far for the skill tree, I hope that's perfectly clear. Again, you can go down here to change the stages wherever you are in the game. The second thing is Ascendancies. We want to go for the Commander of Darkness first, because that will allow us to get way more AoE res for free. It also just slightly increases our damage, and once you get the first aura, which is Rev, it will help you tremendously, dealing way more damage than before. The second lab will be Mindless Aggression, and the third lab will be Bone Barrier, because Bone Barrier still is very good for defense. It really helps us to stay alive, and Unnatural Strength is only good once you get certain things going, which I will address in the item section, because we need very specific items to reach a certain threshold for Spectres. Right now you can see that I have active of 4 Spectres. I didn't use a chest that gives me +1, so that would be 5 then, but those are quite expensive, so we opted in to go for 4, and that requires us to have level 25 gem. So where are we getting all those levels from? Of course, we are getting 2 levels from this node, and then we are getting 1 level from our Ray Spectre gem, which is level 21 baseline. So that would push us to a level 23 at this point. So where are we getting the last 2 levels from? The last 2 levels will be from a wand. The wand should have +1 to spell skill gems or +1 to minion spell skill gems, as far as I know. Those two can roll together, of course, but 2 of those is really expensive, so we're obviously opting in for only 1 of those. And then we want to have boots that have +1 to all Ray Spectre gems. This is now only available on Elder boots, and you have to roll it yourself and not with bound forces as before. You can obviously raise your chance of rolling it with a bound forces, so nothing changed there, but you will need Elder boots for this to work. Alright. Let's go over the gear real quick. It's not that hard. Basically what we're looking for is just having gear that has high life and high res, and obviously with the recent changes a little bit of chaos res would also work fine, especially for things like gloves. Those are just pure stat sticks for life and res basically. Same goes for boots. You want to have high movement speed, 35% if possible, right? So similar to those, but res would be perfect on those right now. Unfortunately, I couldn't get anything right here. For the chest, you want to have really high life. It's important to get as much flat life here and a few percent here and there for all your percentage life from the tree to scale this flat life. So yeah, I would recommend just getting this. You don't need 10% max life as extra energy shield later on. It's just a nice mod to soak a little bit of initial damage early on when you're getting the chaos res. You don't really need that. So with the foresight node in the tree, that was like what, 1.9k ES or something. Yeah, about 1.8k with Faith and Steel a little bit more. Yeah, about 1.9k ES that I just got for free basically. So you can do that, but you don't need to. It's totally up to you if you want to use this craft, and if you already have it available. It's a Gravicious mod from Bayard items. And for the helmet, I would recommend bone helmets, because of the 20% increased damage once you get a little bit more currency going. But the importance that's here would normally be just having the level 16 to 20 minion damage, as well as the +2 or 3 level of socketed minion gems. Either is fine, it just buffs our zombies a little bit higher, so they will assist in dealing a little bit more single dire damage. So it's just nice to have this, to have higher levels on there. I think 2 level is perfectly fine for having the maximum zombie count that we can acquire, but you can obviously go for 3 to just increase the damage a little bit. But yeah, other slots here is the same as always, just get life and chaos res. For the amulet, we want to have Jinx Juju because it just increases the effect of our curse, because we are playing with 2 curses, and it also increases the effect of our non-curse auras, which we're also using 2 of. And the big part here is that 10% of damage we are taking is transferred to our Spectre's life, which is essentially 10% less damage taken, which is really big, and also just a little bit of chaos res. And the second thing is, the most important item right here is Vicarious Charity. You want to have that because if we're hitting enemies with ball lightning, they will give our minions friendly charges, and friendly charges are completely ridiculous in terms of damage scaling. Same goes for power charges, but we unfortunately cannot kill, so that is out of the question. So yeah, I would highly recommend getting those two uniques early on for a decent price. Shield certainly is the cheaper option, the amulet tends to go for a bit higher. But yeah, I would highly recommend getting the shield, it's really important. And then for the rest of the items, get a high life belt. It does not need to have increased attributes in life, of course, but it's nice to have. Very, very high life on the belt. And for the rings, you want to have one ring with conductivity or ally weakness, and then there's socket in the other one in your ball lightning setup for the curse, and the other ring can just be high life, high res, chaos res with minion damage. There's an incursion mod, there's also a redeemer mod, so choose whatever suits your needs, but there's nothing that really needs to be on here. The curse certainly should be on the other ring, and as you can see, this ring is total garbage, but it's okay. It was okay enough for me to consider using it. And for the flasks, in my opinion, this is the best setup, but you can obviously change stuff around. So you want to have alchemist flasks, especially for the granite, basalt, and jade, because this will increase everything the flask gives you. For the granite, that's the curse removal, which is not really needed, but it's also the armor. For the basalt flask, it will increase the physical damage reduction, and it will also increase the evasion rating you gain during the flask effect by 15%, about 25% actually. And for the Jade Flask, same thing, just gives us more armor, more evasion. So with those two, we should get around, what is it? About 70% increased armor from 3, which would result in 78%. It's actually more in-game. Like sometimes I'm hitting close to 86%. Physical damage reduction, and also just nice evade chance, but it's not really needed. You can change the Jade out, but I just like having a little bit of evade in my build. And yeah, block chance is 24%, nothing really interesting here. You can obviously choose Rumi's Concoction over the Granite Flask if you want to, but then you have to implement curses somewhere, which then would like line out the Jade Flask and so on. But it's totally up to you, and for the Mana Flask you want to have an Enduring Flask of Heat or whatever to just be freeze immune, and then just a burn immunity. That's what I choose, but it's totally up to you what you want to have and not want to have. Right here, and you can also mix those up wherever you find those suitable. I would recommend having a bubbling flask. I think that's a better choice for necromancers, but it's also again up to you. Just make sure to have dousing, heat, and warding on 3 of your flasks. It doesn't matter where they are. But keep in mind that alchemists increase the effects, so an alchemist flask with like warding right here, for example, is not that good. But you can change this up. It's totally up to you what you want to use. And with that, we should have covered all the items. So let's go to the skills. Obviously, we want to have raised specters in a 6-link. I'm yet using Control Destruction. I don't know if I want to use that later on because there are certain nodes in the cluster jewels that increase crit chance, so we might opt out of Control Destruction later on for something else, which I'm not 100% certain yet, but you have the POB, so you can check this out just by clicking in here, having the Spectre selected, and just check out what other things should be there for you for the taking. Yeah, so we want to have Spectre, obviously. It is the most OP gem in here. Want Feeding Frenzy, not for the damage, just one Feeding Frenzy in there to make them aggressive. So our minions just run around aggressively and not just staying at your position and doing nothing at all, which really sucks. So you want to have this in here. Min damage ally focus, obviously. And if I would build a 4-link, I would go for the Raised Spectre with Feeding Frenzy, and then probably Spell Echo with either ally focus or minion damage. It's perfectly up to you what you want to choose over the other, or what you have available at this point of time in the leveling section. Then take the other one after that, and then in the 6-slot Control Destruction or whatever suits your needs after that. Then for our I have it in the gloves at the moment. For a board lightning setup, you want to have ball lightning with curse on hit, GMP and ally weakness. Keep in mind that you don't need any levels on those two, on ball lightning and GMP. GMP will benefit from quality, but it's not needed, just 10% cast speed. And then curse on hit with ally weakness or conductivity, depending on what you have on your ring. So if you have an ally weakness ring, you take the conductivity here. But yeah. And also those should be leveled. If you can get a higher level of ally weakness, it will increase the curse effectiveness or the ally res reduction basically. For curse on hit, I think it's not really mandatory. The race zombie is an artificial 5-link. It will include, obviously, the minion damage. The burning damage is not needed here, it's completely irrelevant, but the minion damage would increase our damage by a lot for the zombies. We yet use physical lightning because we are reducing the lightning res of enemies so much that it's actually getting better to use physical lightning, but you can obviously change that around if you don't want to. But I would recommend having this with Motive Strike and Feeding Frenzy again for the aggressive stance, not for the damage. You can obviously choose to have Feeding Frenzy in here to get a Feeding Frenzy buff for your Spectres and then just use Death Mark in here instead of Feeding Frenzy. That is totally fine. I would obviously use that for bosses, of course. For your wand will have 3 gems in there, which don't need to be linked, but you can link them. It doesn't change anything, but just keep in mind they don't need to be linked in your wand, which is Desecrate with any level, it doesn't matter. Then Flash Offering with the highest level possible, of course, for the increased attack and cast speed, but again, it doesn't really matter that much, and those are most of the time really cheap. And a 3rd gem will be Avar Summon Skeletons with as high of a level as possible. Of course, it would be beneficial and also high quality, but it doesn't need to be 21. It's just nice to have, but it's really not needed. And this will be our just permanent skelly spam to just keep the attention of the mobs off us, and also having the Val skeletons ready for boss fights will certainly help, and also just for like coverage most of the time. Then for this link we'll have Convocation, Flamdash and Faster Casting. Faster Casting is still a placeholder for the new 2nd Wind Gem, which should be perfectly nice for Flame Dash, but you can choose whatever you want in here. You can also go for like Arcane Surge or whatever, but it doesn't really matter. Just Faster Casting, just to make it a little bit quicker. Like there's a cast time in Flame Dash and just makes it a little bit more smooth, but it really doesn't matter. You can totally uncheck this and just don't use it whatsoever. And then for the auras we have Skitterbots, Wrath, Generosity and Enlighten. The Enlighten is kind of important later on when you're using Mind Over Matter to have enough mana unreserved, so it can take a big hit, right? It should be like, unreserved mana should normally be 30% of your life to be perfectly in balance basically, but we obviously didn't achieve it. We only got like 312 unreserved mana, but it just helps having this in here to double your unreserved mana basically, to just take a little bit more damage off the hits you take. And yeah, the rest again, those are auras, so keep the level as high as possible. The quality is not really needed that much, it's just nice to have higher range on those auras or on the Skitterbots. And yeah, that's basically it as far as the skills go. Gameplay is really easy. You just go in here, you spam your ball lightning, and all your minions will just hit stuff. And the ball lightning is only there for us to trigger stuff in our wand. As you can see, I've triggered a Skellies, I've triggered a Desecrate right here, and I've triggered a Flash Offering, which will explode the corpses in the Desecrate to grant us our buff. And we'll just continue to spawn Skellies. And the ball lightning will actively double curse any enemy we hit with it, and then therefore also reducing the rest, and then our zombies and our specters will just do the rest for us. You will constantly press Convocation and Bone Armor just to keep your guard buff up basically all the time, and Convocation to give your minions a lot of regen, right? And yeah. Spectres obviously want to have Slave Drawers, which is in part 1 act 5 here in the control blocks. Just go over Sears Tower and run into the door on the top to get there. And yeah, I think that should be everything that is essential for this build in terms of stuff like tree, I explained that, about skills, items, and so on. Ascendancy. There's nothing really particular interesting. If you want to see how I level this from Act 1 to Act 10, you can go over to my Twitch or watch the VOD I linked in my general chat. I have a Discord which is also linked, and there's a VOD from Act 110 which we did yesterday, I think. Yeah, yesterday. So on the 11th of March, just after patch notes hit, basically. And yeah, you can check this out if you're interested about how I'm leveling this. I will not upload it to YouTube because just such a huge file, and there will be muted sections in there, unfortunately, because copyrighted music. But yeah, I hope you all have fun with the build, and you also have like great luck in your league start of this build. I certainly hope to make a good amount of money with this. And speaking of money, there will be a currency guide on my channel real soon before the league starts to inform you about what I'm planning on doing, what I think will give you a great start into the league, as well as a great amount of currency. And I will link this in the comments, I think, because it's a later video, so I just pin it after I've recorded it in the future. So future me will tell you what to do, basically. And yeah, consider subscribing and liking the video, of course, like always. And I don't really care, but it helps the YouTube algorithm to recommend it to other people. That's why I'm also recording this in English, even though it's mostly German stream and I'm a German guy, of course. So yeah, just have fun. If there are any questions, ask me in the comments of this video, or just ask me live on Twitch. Again, twitch.tv/Saltydayn, link is in the description, and have a wonderful day. Bye bye.